Now it's 8 o'clock. Jerry's a little bit late tonight. The searchlights are in position. The guns are ready. The People's Army of Volunteers is ready. They are the ones who are really fighting this war. The firemen, the air raid wardens, the ambulance drivers. And there's the wail of the banshee.
In today's video, I'm going to be talking about an infamous serial killer from World War I named Bela. I talked a bit about this topic in one of my previous videos on the World War I mysteries iceberg. I wanted to make a longer video on him as I found it interesting how he essentially turned into an urban legend of the time. Bela was born in Izsák, Austria-Hungary sometime during 1877. His father's name was János Kiss and his mother's Verona Varga. Not much is known about Kiss's early life, though it is believed by some that he had an inappropriate relationship with his mother while growing up. In the early 1900s, Kiss would become a tinsmith and moved to Szentkoda, a town that has now become a part of the city Budapest. Kiss would marry twice while living there and have two children, Aranka and Alonka. In 1912, Bela Kiss's wife would abandon him with another lover, and later that year he would hire a housekeeper who goes by Mrs. Jakubek. While Bela Kiss's main day job was being a tinsmith, he was also a big fan of occult practices and astrology. Mrs. Jakubek, the housekeeper, noticed that Kiss would meet with women frequently, and this was because Kiss would offer his services in the newspaper as a fortune teller and a matrimonial agent. He would sometimes even bring these women back to his house, though Mrs. Jakubek said she was often not allowed contact with them. Kiss being a fan of occult practices was not a secret, so these interactions were never looked at as strange, as most people just saw it as him practicing his beliefs. When talking to townspeople and his neighbors, it was found that no one was exactly close with him, though overall he seemed to be well liked and never had issues with anyone. It was also noted by some that he was handsome, well off, and would even throw lavish parties at his house. The only thing that ever seemed a little strange was that he kept many large barrels in his yard, though when asked about it, he claimed he was just storing gas for the upcoming war that was beginning to brew in Europe. This seemed completely within reason, and with him being a person that worked with metal as his main job, keeping metal barrels around seemed normal. If you know anything about history, you would know that World War I was a brutal and drawn-out conflict that devastated most of Europe. One of the countries that played a vital part in igniting the war was Bela Kiss's home country, Austria-Hungary. With the war starting, Austria-Hungary began to draft men across the country to go and fight. Among these men drafted to go and fight in the war was Bela Kiss, who would leave to fight in 1914. While he was gone during the war, he chose to leave his house in the housekeeper's care, Mrs. Jakubek. As the years passed, the war began to get more brutal, and countries were scrambling to collect supplies to keep their war efforts going. Sometime during July of 1916, the Budapest police would be contacted by a local landlord from where Kiss lived about the drums of gasoline that he had stored on his property. The police decided to go and collect this gasoline for the war, and while usually a citizen might deny the government in a situation like this, Kiss was off fighting the war, so there was really no one to stop them from taking the drums. Mrs. Jakubek would try to stop them at first, but once it was clear she had no real legal ownership over the property, there wasn't much that she could do. Once the police had finally seized the barrels, they began to crack them open. Waiting to be hit by that oh-so-familiar smell of gasoline, they were instead met by another overwhelming odor. This was the smell of death. One by one, the barrels would be opened, and in each one was the bodies of women Kiss had killed, each in various stages of decomposition. After the barrels had been opened and the shocking discovery made, it was determined that Kiss had murdered 24 women. The police immediately opened up an investigation on the case, and his whole house had been raided. Mrs. Jakubek swore up and down that she knew nothing about Kiss's crimes, but did tell the police about a room that she was forbidden from ever going into. During the raid, the police found the room she was talking about and discovered a list of women Kiss had kept in contact with, as well as books on the methods he would use to kill his victims, usually strangulation or poison. After he killed the women, he would drain their blood and place their bodies in menthol to stop them from decomposing. His method of draining the victims' blood from their neck had authorities questioning if he was practicing vampirism and led to his nickname, the Hungarian Vampire. It was discovered that Kiss's first victims were his former wife and her lover, who he'd claimed ran away together. After that incident, he had continued murdering for over a decade. After the bodies of Bela Kiss's victims were discovered, the news of the spree quickly spread, and soon the authorities would be after Kiss. One of the first issues that the authorities ran into while beginning their search was the first name Bela and the last name Kiss were popular in Austria-Hungary, making it hard to figure out which person they were even after. Another issue that the authorities ran into was that Kiss was at war, and World War I was fast-paced and brutal, so Kiss could have been dead or in prison, and there's a chance no one would even know. On October 4th, 1916, Detective Chief Carol Lee Nagy, a detective who had been assigned to the Kiss case, received a letter that claimed Bela Kiss had sustained an injury during a battle and was currently recuperating at a hospital in Serbia. Nagy would rush out to this hospital as soon as he got the news, but on arrival he found a dead soldier in Kiss's bed instead of Kiss himself. Nagy immediately called the Hungarian police, who arrived shortly after but could not track Kiss. It is assumed that while recovering, Kiss was reading news from back in his hometown, saw the reports of his murders and the discovered bodies, and decided to flee. Bela Kiss has never been officially seen again. The reason I said he had never been seen again officially is because there had been many rumored sightings of Kiss since his disappearance. One popular rumor was that he had switched his identity with the soldier that had passed during the war and fled using that soldier's identity. A person in 1919 claimed that they saw Kiss back in Hungary on the Margara Bridge in Budapest. Not too long after, a French Legion soldier said that another French Legion soldier named Hoffman had been using the name Kiss in some of his private letters, bragged about being good at using a rope to strangle people, and had matched Kiss's description. When the officials were notified of this and came to arrest the man, he had disappeared. Again in 1932, there would be a rumored Kiss sighting, this time in New York City, when Detective Henry Oswald would claim he saw Kiss coming out of a subway station in Times Square. There were also rumors in New York at the same time that Kiss was living there secretly and working as a janitor. When police went to interview the suspected janitor, he had quit and never returned again. There would continue to be sightings of Kiss all throughout Europe, but no investigations ever led to the findings of Bela Kiss. As for if any of these sightings of Kiss were legit, who knows? For all we know, he might have died while fighting in the war, as the officials never did find him at that hospital. It would also be nearly impossible to find him even today, let alone back in the early 1900s. There were no cameras, digital transactions, or AI facial recognition technology back then, so there'd be no real evidence of his return to look at. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider liking and subbing. It helps the channel. This has been Night Stories, and I'll see you guys next time.